My guest today is an old friend, Brad Talwar. He's the founder and CEO of TalentBurst, and we're here today at their headquarters, which is new to me. I haven't been here since you bought the building, so congrats on that.
Thank you.
I'm sure it's not that new, but new to me. So why don't we just start off with what is TalentBurst and what do you guys do so we can have a platform to talk from?
Yeah, sure. So I started TalentBurst along with my two business partners in 2002. And initially, when we started the business, it was just a technology and engineering staffing company, just very plain and simple. We just wanted to fill, contract roles with larger corporations that needed contingent workers on short-term project work. But over the last, 18 years that we've owned this business, it's evolved dramatically. And now we're one of the leaders in human capital transformation. And we've got 5 different service offerings combined, which provide a total talent management solution. So our IT and engineering staffing is definitely one of those 5 components that we provide. But the other 4 are essentially management of non-traditional workforces, which are typically fairly large workforces for gig economy companies, like the Ubers.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Well, that's adaptive thinking. That's cool.
Yeah. So we manage large workforces for several gig economy companies, which are essentially household names. In addition to that, we also manage workforces for large Global 2000 corporations that are in non-traditional work environments. So think warehouses, distribution centers, supply chain, logistics, R&D, pharmaceutical drug manufacturing, those kind of work environments, which essentially leads to elevated levels of workers' comp insurance. People can get injured.
Sure.
They can get exposed to toxic chemicals, pressurized gases, that kind of stuff. So we help our customers manage risk around injuries and exposures for their workforce. And in addition to that, we also have a fairly sizable and growing service offering around global payroll, where we manage similarly large workforces, but on a global scale in different countries. And Canada, UK, India, Puerto Rico, and Mexico are some of the biggest ones that we manage.
It seems like you're doing niche business, but on a fairly large scale.
Yes,
so rather than just providing that workforce, you have to, for the type of clients you're talking, you have to really actually understand the needs more than just more than a resume read, right? You have to pretty much know your clients really well.
Yeah. So there's riches and niches, and that's what we've learned. And we essentially, once we research a niche, and if we find that, that's the direction we want to go in, we like to essentially be the dominant provider in that niche. So if you think of global payroll or, managing gig economy customers, managing gig economy workforces, we are probably the leader in both of those niches.
It makes complete sense now that you bring it up that there is that niche, but I wouldn't have thought of that niche.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool that you guys have gotten there. So is that part of with you and your partners, has that been a key piece of the business, is kind of keeping your eye on areas that are budding or that people aren't servicing yet that you think are going to become something?
Yeah. So we really keep our ears to the ground, and we just try and always be very intuitive about where, the future of work is going to be.
Yeah.
And we try and stay ahead of the curve. And we're never comfortable in just doing, what we're currently doing. We're always looking that, okay, as the economy evolves, how can we evolve ahead of the economy? In fact, we're, currently working on, a huge technical innovation in our industry, which is related to how payroll is processed for workers. And, once we roll this out, it's actually already live with one of our customers. It'll really kind of set us apart from the rest of the industry and how, people view just a very simple process like payroll processing, and how by innovating within a very simple process, you can actually create a huge differentiation against the rest of, the providers in that industry.
Well, I would imagine that a global company has to adhere to tax regulations and laws for where the people live that they're paying. So if they're paying people in 52 different countries, then that's a headache, right?
Yeah.
And then you make that headache go away.
Correct.
Just trying to make it so my little brain can understand it.
Yeah.
And then just to finish setting the scale for TalentBurst. So you've been around for 18 years, you said, and this is the headquarters, but you've got a number of other offices, right? As the business has grown, there's different satellites or other locations where they service customers?
So we have a dual headquarters in San Francisco because a bulk of our customers are the big technology names. So global, 100 of technology. In addition to that, we have a large Canadian presence in Mississauga, Ontario, which is a suburb of Toronto. And we have a very large operation just south of New Delhi in Gurgaon, which is a suburb of New Delhi, essentially. And outside of these, we've got, satellite locations, several different, Raleigh, North Carolina, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, Las Vegas, Nevada, Los Angeles, Denver. So a lot of smaller sales locations or customer support locations. But the big hubs that we currently have are Boston, San Francisco, Toronto, and Gurgaon, India.
So you're kind of keeping on the pulse of where tech companies are growing as well. So do you have to spend a lot of time at the different sites? Do you get there pretty often?
Yeah, so I am in California at least once a month. And I'm at least a couple of times of the year in Toronto, and then maybe like once a year in India. But I have two business partners, and we kind of split some of the travel.
Yeah,
so
that's nice.
Yeah, so my chief operating officer, who's my business partner, he spends a lot of time in India, and he's there at least once every quarter. And then my CFO, he also travels to the West Coast as well as to Canada. Actually, he probably picks up the bulk of travel to our Canadian operation.
If it's once a month, it's not, well, just speaking California, it's not too bad. Is it nice to get out there once in a while?
I mean, typically when I'm out there for 3 days.
Yeah.
And I think in those 3 days, there's at least 3 meetings a day that are packed in.
Yeah.
Followed by, cocktails or a customer dinner.
Right.
So it's a really, really busy schedule, and, it's definitely not a vacation.
No, it's a grind.
It's a grind. So, I'm typically sleeping like 4 to 6 hours, and I'm up East Coast time because that's what my body is used to. So I'm up at like 4:30 a.m., and then I, finish up a bunch of my emails, get through a bunch of my work, and then I go into the office, work through till 6, and then, do either a cocktail or a dinner, and I collapse in my hotel bed, at like 10:30 or 11.
Yeah,
and
not
I'm
a guess.
Back at it. So, yeah, when I come back from the West Coast, I am exhausted, and I probably sleep like 12 hours.
Yeah, making up for the lost time.
Yeah.
Cool. So now going back in the Wayback Machine, 18 years ago, tell me, like, why did you found TalentBurst? Where did it come from? What were you? Maybe start with what were you doing beforehand?
So my two business partners and I, Baljit Deep and I, we had worked at another company, which was a startup, essentially in the staffing industry as well, which was acquired by the parent company for Monster.com in December of 2000. So the three of us ran that business post-acquisition for Monster or Monster Worldwide up until July of 2002. And 2002 was a really challenging year for the economy, for the global economy, for the US economy. It was just post 9/11. We essentially started talking about starting TalentBurst 6 months after 9/11. So it was a really challenging time. We had to kind of think through our business plan, what we wanted to do. But, we're entrepreneurs and we thrive in, a challenging environment. We just didn't want to get comfortable and essentially work for a large corporation where, we just were not being challenged enough, or, we didn't feel a sense of ownership.
Yeah, your influence couldn't be as big as you might want it to be.
Correct. So yeah, we wanted a challenge as well as we wanted influence as well as we wanted ownership. and a sense of believing and belonging.
So you were working in the staffing industry, so you kind of had an idea of maybe how you would attack a new, create a new company to attack a new angle in doing that and handle it a little bit differently?
Yeah, so Monster Worldwide, I mean, that's a really interesting, company. Everyone knows Monster.com, which is the resume search engine, where you can go post your resume or look for a job. But they had several other divisions. So we kind of had exposure working with multiple different divisions, including a marketing division. They had talent acquisition, which was through the staffing business that we had. They also had a solutions division. They had an engineering division. So we essentially touched each of these different divisions, and we kind of synthesized and realized that, we had if we were to take the best aspects of everything we'd learned and combine them, we could create TalentBurst.
So you got to see the big company version of what you wanted to do and how the different pieces came together and ran. And then you got to sort of pick the best of what you could see and make something new, but more nimble and small and your own and try to carve it out.
So that helped us kind of get off the ground, just that specific concept. But once we were off the ground, we really had to kind of innovate every single day just to stay alive.
Well, that's the way it is, right? People always assume that you come up with a business or you have a plan and you know what you're going to do, and then you launch your business, and that's just the way it is for the foreseeable future. And that couldn't be further from the truth, right? You find out immediately that next year you have a different business, even though it's got the same name, but you got to figure out how you're going to service the clients, what the clients' changing needs are, what the industry is doing differently. It's always new, which is what keeps me interested. I need that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
So, you guys were there, and then you're here. What about the time in between? Did it take a while to plan? Were you guys meeting in coffee shops and talking about what it should be like?
Yes.
Tell me about that time. Like, what was, were you all working at the time? So you're all still with the...
Yeah, so all three of us were working at, a division of Monster Worldwide. And so I wanted to go off on my own and start my own business. And Deep and Baljit, my two business partners, they had talked separately. And then eventually, when I kind of told them that, hey, this is the direction, I'm planning on going myself, they kind of shared with me that they also wanted to be entrepreneurs. And then we realized that all three of us had very different skill sets. I had... more of the sales business development angle. My Deep, who's our CFO, obviously brought the back end, financials, accounting, cost management, payroll, some of those skill sets to the equation. And our third partner, he is really, really strong operationally. And, he kind of gets involved in the guts of the business and really is able to build out teams, build out processes, and then execution of the core business model. So we felt that all three of us had a very complementary skill set, and that's essentially why we should go into business together.
It's really cool. Side note, I've talked to a few people now that run their business as partnerships and started them with partners. And it's funny because in the news or in business school, you always hear about, partnerships ending badly or people not getting along. And so far, every single interview, the people love their partners. It's been long-term businesses that they get along great. Of course, there's ups and downs and you have differences in opinion and, how should we handle this? And there's that, but you'd have that in a friendship,
Yes, exactly.
But the fact is that everybody, I know they're not all perfect, but everyone I'm talking to has been thankful and appreciative for the partners that they've had and the way it's helped them take the business forward. I mean, I don't even have a point in saying that other than it's really struck me that it's a good way to go, and that it provides this support network that you have that someone like me doesn't have, where I don't have partners.
Yeah. So, partnerships just like a marriage, no marriage is smooth. You have to really work at it. There's ups, there's downs, there's good, pluses and minuses. But eventually you have a common goal and you come out ahead.
If it was all smooth, it'd be boring anyway, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So, so our partnership, we've been through, the financial recession, 2007, 2008, which was a very challenging time for us. We started post 9/11, like literally 6 months post 9/11, which is probably the worst time in the history of like the world, right after 9/11.
There's so much change, and it was such a charged time where people didn't even know what to make of their own life or identity. Everyone remember those flags hanging from every car, which was nice to see that the symbolic patriotism. But it was like that day just triggered so much change that lasted a few years. It was people kind of trying to refigure out what it meant to be who they were.
Yeah. And, the U.S. economy itself, and I would say a bulk of our revenues come from within the U.S., has changed dramatically over the last 18 years from when we started. Initially we were 100% U.S. And then post the recession, we realized that we were a one-trick pony, which was just the IT and engineering staffing business that we had. And we needed to diversify and have multiple revenue streams just so that if one piece of the economy, is not doing as well, then we can at least lean on a different revenue stream to keep the, business afloat and rolling, in a positive direction. So in 2008, 2009 is when we started our high hazard payroll business. And we started with one customer, and I think now we've got probably 60 customers, all, global 2,000 companies. And it's been a really interesting transformation, because at this point, when we started, we were just simply offering a sliver of a solution, in a human capital sphere. But now, we've got 5 or 6 different solutions, all of which are very complementary, and we can provide a total talent management solution to our end customers. So when we walk in, we've essentially got a solution for different aspects of their business.
Yeah, different departments.
Yeah. And, so we're kind of a one-stop shop at this point for many of these customers. And we really align ourselves with them. We partner with them as a management team. And again, even with a customer, there's no smooth sailing with them,
Nope.
There's definitely road bumps along the way.
Good times and bad.
But we're able to, work through some of those challenges. And, so far, I would say we've got probably amongst the highest retention rates in the industry, definitely in the very high 90 percentile. So maybe I would say like 97, 98 percentile. I'm never going to say 100% because I'm sure we've lost a couple of customers along the way, whether intentionally or unintentionally, it just happens. Just the nature of attrition and
it's business.
Yeah.
What was I just going to say? High hazard payroll. What does that mean for somebody like me?
Yeah, so high hazard payroll is very simple. It's essentially payroll or managing risk around workers' comp, insurances or workers' comp scenarios that can occur in, for example, non-traditional work environments. So like I mentioned, a warehouse, a distribution center, a manufacturing location, or an R&D location within a biotech or a pharma company.
So literally where someone might get hurt more than a traditional job.
Yeah, might get hurt or might die.
Right, more than an accounting firm or something.
Oh, absolutely,
yeah,
exactly.
Okay, so it's just high hazard. I didn't know if I was working too hard to try to figure out what it was, but...
So it's essentially, think of like an Amazon warehouse, right? Even though we don't manage Amazon's high hazard, but that's just an example. There's people that are operating pallet jacks, there's people that are operating forklifts.
Yeah.
There's material stacked like sometimes 5 stories high.
Right.
One of those pallets falls on, a worker below, they're done. Similarly, forklifts, can topple, people can get injured.
Run over toes, whatever it is. There's
toes, feet,
there's things in movement all day long. There's risk.
Correct.
Yeah.
So that's essentially how we manage it. We are able to micromanage certain functions within those workforces. And we've partnered with our insurance carriers. We've got multiple carriers that, carry some of that risk or insure that risk with us. And we provide them as much transparency as possible. We learn from them. We partner with them to provide them as much information. We conduct safety audits. We provide training to the workforce, whether it's through video or written manuals. We just try and make the situation as safe as possible.
After a while, you got to be a part of their business. I mean, that's pretty deep what you do. It's not a lightweight service that you're providing. So I imagine that probably has to do with the high retention rates. I mean, not to take anything away from the customer service and the good job, but it lends itself to, if you do a good job, you can keep that piece of business, right? Because you're taking a gigantic headache off of them.
Yes.
That's smart. It goes back to, like you said, when you got hit with the recession or the economy just, tanking, we got hit hard too. And to diversify and to not try to fill the void with more sales, not just doubling down on selling what you do, but to take a step back and say, what else can we do to mitigate this in the future and move forward? That's a sign of the businesses that do last for 18 years and 20 years, as opposed to 3 or 4. It's not always easy to take a step back and look and think, well, what aren't we doing right? What don't we know? Because especially when you have the entrepreneurial mindset and you're young, a lot of times you think you know more than you do.
Right.
And that's a tool at the time because it helps you get started. It helps you have the bravado to take some of the steps necessary. And then thankfully we age and we hopefully get smarter and realize all the stuff we don't know. And then we can step back and look at the business and look at your customers and try to figure out, well, what do we have to do differently here? What could we be doing better? What have we been screwing up for the last few years, and just getting by? Because maybe we were good at the skill. Right. But we weren't doing as good as we could by the customer or for the business.
Yeah.
So backing up again, you guys the 3 of you are still working at the Monster parent company, and you're now starting to talk, the 3 of you, about forming something. You don't know what yet. So how does that unfold? How do you guys end up?
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting. So essentially one of the first things we did is we wanted to see what domain names were available, because we definitely knew that we wanted a .com versus a .net. So, I kind of was literally sitting on my couch, and I think back then it was probably VeriSign, which was, one of the domain name registries. And I was literally on VeriSign just looking to see what .coms I could get with talent as being part of it. So I'm sure I went through, I don't know, Talent Wave or, Talent First or
Talent everything.
Talent anything, right?
Yeah.
And then eventually it's funny because there was literally a Starburst, candy right in front of me. And I combined the burst from the Starburst with the talent. And guess what? It was available on VeriSign.
Wow.
So literally right then is when TalentBurst was born, because the domain was available.
Sure.
Even though we hadn't incorporated the company, we'd not done any conflict checks with any Secretary of State, but we got the domain. So luckily for us,
off to the races.
We were off to the races, and it worked out that, state of Massachusetts didn't have another TalentBurst, and Delaware didn't have another TalentBurst, and here we are.
Yeah. Well, worst case, you could have sold them the domain.
Yeah.
There's a business in that too.
Yeah.
But all right, so you've got the name, you've got the idea, you know where you want to work. How do things start coming together? You don't just hang up a shingle and have clients, right? So you guys, the 3 of you, have to start planning. And tell me about when it was early, like the scrappy days, because there had to have been some.
Yeah, it was really, really scrappy. We had been in the industry at that point for about 6 or 7 years. So we had some, relationships and some networks and some key people that we'd worked with. And essentially it was a lot of, back then, banging the phone and, sending emails with introductory brochures, literally printing hard copy brochures and sending them, via snail mail to prospects, and then just kind of waiting back to hear from someone. After a certain point, we just kept hammering the phone, and, the first person called back and said, okay, maybe I just need a Java programmer. Can you find me one for like 3 months on a contract? And that's how we just started going. And, we had, a business associate out in, Texas. And he'd known us and we were friends. And he was someone that said, all right, I always need help with, recruiting engineering talent, and Texas is such a booming state, back then and even till today. So, I just have so much business. I need you guys to help me out. If you can, it'll be a win-win for us. And he was one of the first guys that really, kind of believed in us and helped us. And then, as luck would have it, maybe 6 or 12 months after we'd started TalentBurst, I get a call, or maybe it could have been, early days through LinkedIn or Facebook or one of the social media platforms. I'm not sure how. But he connected with us and said, listen, I'm working at essentially, one of the leading transaction processors, in the world. And I need, two very specialized transaction processing developers. And, once we started working with him, we were able to get a contract with this company. It's a, multi-billion-dollar company. Their logo's on every single credit card out there. And that was it. Once we had that, contract, we just started working very closely with, this transaction processor until today.
Well, that's really specialized too. So that sounds like it was a bit of luck and a bit of hard work that opened up a door to a specialized workflow where you could actually have a niche, right? Is that?
Yeah. So we, even till today, I would say on the staffing side, at least 40 to 45% of our customers are in financial transaction processing, very specialized. So we essentially work
with a lot of oversight. I mean, it's you have to be very careful in that realm.
So there's definitely, compliance and regulation and stuff, but a bulk of the work that we do, or our employees and contractors do, is within development of systems for settlement systems or credit card systems or money transfer systems, or banking systems. So I think we've touched almost any kind of network or transaction processing platform that's out there.
So, and that you said that lucky break essentially came, say, 6 to 12, or let's say...
I think it was more like 12 months.
12 months. So for that first year, were you up against, were you still working?
No.
Okay. So you guys went out on your own, you hung a flag, and you were like, we're going to do it. So then were you hitting, I know you were hitting some small luck where someone would say, I need someone for 3 months. Were you getting by on that, but were you facing a lot of, great, sounds awesome. Who do you work with? Were you getting people kind of like asking who you are, and you have to give that, well, we're you, hopefully, because we're brand new.
Yeah. So, I mean, what we did in that case is we, definitely leaned on the fact that we were key members of a, staffing startup, which eventually got acquired, in a very splashy deal by the parent company of Monster in December of 2000. And, that deal was, fairly public. Monster's a public company, so the numbers were very public, and they were very proud of, the company that they'd acquired, which we had essentially built. And we were able to lean on some of our heritage and some of our track record to essentially counter, hey, who else are you guys working with? And I think that worked well until today. We're really proud of, the company that we built, which was People.com, which was acquired eventually by, one of the divisions of Monster Worldwide. And, the lessons that we learned there, it was a good learning experience, especially when you're 21 and just kind of getting going, in the business workforce.
Well, and that industry was kind of getting going. I mean, Monster kind of got that going, right? As far as digitizing the job placement world. That was kind of the beginning of it, right? So you were there as the industry that you're still in today was sort of born, and you were part of it. So I imagine you could parlay that, but there still had to be some people who were like, well, what have you done? Those people it always comes up. It's funny too, because that never seems, at least in my industry, that never goes away, where you'll get, a client will come across us and or not a client, a lead will come across us and they'll reach out. And when I start talking to them, they're like, so what if it especially biotech is really bad for us? So what have you done in our space? And I always find that to be, I understand where the question comes from, but it's a misguided question when you're talking to a marketer. You don't want a specific niche answer that's the same as everyone else in your vertical. You want someone that can talk to your consumer, someone that can craft some messaging or an experience that's going to make you unique so that you can sell more widgets or make more medicine or whatever it might be. But I always find that weird, is the default go-to for like the middle management is, well, what have you done exactly like what we need?
Yeah. I mean, you just have to kind of convince them that, listen, we've got a really good team. We've got a good track record. We know what we're doing. We've got really good customer references. And that should be enough to convince them to essentially hire us or hire you, for their project or for their work or contract or whatever the case might be.
And I think it's pretty awesome that you started the business 18 years ago with your two partners, and I'm sitting here with you today, and they're both here. You guys are still going, you're still working, you're still moving forward, you're still employing people, you're still servicing clients, and you're still working together. What's different, today versus back then about your work life? How have you guys matured into the role?
So the funny thing is, I was just telling my wife, I said, in 2019, I think that was the year I worked the hardest. So, when you have a small company, you have small problems, big company, big problems. It's like kids, right? Small kids, small problems, big kids, big problems.
Yep.
So, the bigger TalentBurst has become, it's become a very challenging role for us as a management team to, keep the engine driving forward. Every single year since inception, we've grown the business. Last year was one of the highest growth years in the history of our company.
Nice.
We grew almost 30%, both our revenue as well as our employee headcount, I think, grew almost 50%.
Wow.
So, we employ at this point literally thousands of employees globally. And, it's challenging because, managing thousands of employees in different states and different countries. Cultures, it's a huge challenge. And keeping everyone aligned towards a common goal and a common vision of moving forward and essentially delivering the best, total talent management solutions for our customers is a challenge.
I'm sure it is.
But that at the same time energizes us because we feel we can build something great, and we're kind of at least along the road towards building something great. IBM wasn't built in a day, or any of these companies, Accenture or Cognizant, weren't really built in a day. It's a journey of 20, 25 years before you actually, make an impact, on either the global economy or the local economy or whatever. But that's what we want to do. We want to make a bigger impact. We want to be more thoughtful about the solutions we're providing our customers. We want to align ourselves with them. We want to partner with them. About 3 years ago, we started partnering with other companies, some public and some not public. And that's been a huge factor in our growth, our partnering network. So we currently have 4 very key partnerships. And this has really, really helped us grow our business. In fact, some of the most interesting and fun customers that we've started providing, our service offerings to in the past 24 months have come through these partnerships.
So what I think is interesting, and it's totally normal, but I think it's from the outside, people don't get it. Especially they don't get it. I mean, I've talked to this with some of the people. In fact, I had one guest who had founded his business, run it for many, many years, and then sold it. So, American dream, everything's perfect, must be nice. But when you talk to him about over the years and the management and, strife and good employees and bad employees and the employees thinking he's a villain at times when they just didn't understand what he was doing. And all those words to get back to, here you are 18 years later, and it's refreshing because you still have your eyes on the prize. You're not sitting here resting on your laurels. You're thinking, what is next? The team is huddling up and figuring out what you're going to attack next. And if you didn't do that, you wouldn't be here, right? TalentBurst wouldn't exist anymore. It takes that kind of grit and desire. I mean, you have to want it, because you could turn the volume down to low and just sit back, and you probably get a couple more years, but it's not going to keep growing. It's not going to keep that advancing.
No, we're very, very energized. And, we've had this discussion about what's next for TalentBurst. Should we sell the business? Should we just kind of sail off into the sunset? Where are we going?
Yeah.
And at this point, we just have a 5-year time horizon. I don't know what I'm going to do in 10 or 15 years. It's too far out. Hopefully I'm still alive. But my business partners and I, we've got a 5-year plan. We're really focused on the execution over the next 12 and 24 months. We're not letting distractions, there's many distractions. There's, all kinds of people that'll call and say, hey, we're here to buy you, or I have a customer that's willing to buy you, or here's a press release someone just sold at, some insane number.
Yeah.
That's all the noise, so we just try and drown out that noise and just stay focused on our business.
Yeah, that's great, because it's not that easy to do, especially when the options start coming up and it's, been 18 years, but because more options come up.
Yeah.
The longer you've been doing it, the better you do, the more years you have of growth, the more those options float around, right? And you can't ignore them because you have to talk about them. So you and the three talk about them, and that's really cool. And that leads me to I've been wondering while you were telling me about the growth. Now that you've got thousands of employees around the world and managing all of these people, I mean, I know you've grown into it, but that's still got to seem pretty daunting or crazy when you think about the whole thing and what's next and how do we manage it across culture and language and traditions. And I mean, it's a big thing, right? Does having the two partners and being here together, does that help you ground? Does that help you to all right, if I think about the big picture right now, my head's going to explode. So right now I'm going to ground and think about how do we handle it from a small perspective and then grow that and then take that company wide?
Yeah. I mean, we essentially just focus on any challenge, just one challenge at a time, because that's all you can do. So you've really got to compartmentalize and just focus on one challenge at a time. And that's what we, are currently doing and what we've done successfully because of, all these different complexities that you mentioned. And every single day there's a new challenge. But our goal and our attitude is we will get over it. It's just how do we get over it? And what's the route that'll provide least friction and get us to the end goal? And that's typically what we'll do. Is we're reasonable people. We try and be reasonable. We try and do right by our employees. We try and do right by our customers. If you do right by your employees and right by your customers, you'll eventually get the right solution.
It's amazing how far it'll get you to just do the right thing.
Yeah,
exactly. It really is. But it's like people have to figure out how to get there, because if you take shortcuts, you think you're going to win. And it seems like the easy way to do it. And if you take the easy way out on anything, not just business, but if you take the shortcuts, it doesn't always work. In fact, it usually won't work. And I feel like you don't really internalize that until you've had some time to mature and you've had some time to, you tried the easy path a couple of times. You tried to take the shortcut and it screwed up and it didn't go well. And then you learn and you grow. And eventually I think I don't know, I can only speak for me, but I look at the hard way or the right way as the fun way because it's going to provide some resistance. It's going to be a little bit tougher to do. So it's going to feel better when you get it done right. And it's going to, but the benefit that it yields at the end is so much greater because you don't leave anything in your wake. You're not hurting anybody along the way. It's you're taking people forward with you, which I think makes a big difference over time,
Sure.
So now the company is bigger. Your roles have changed, even though they're the same roles. Essentially, you guys, the three of you, still do the same roles, but it's a different job. And you're centered, you primarily, Boston and San Fran. Have you seen a lot of companies come and go in the 18 years?
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
I imagine that's a pretty good seat you're at where you're dealing with, because you deal with a lot of high growth companies, right? Where they don't know how to do what you do and they basically need to plug it in. Some of them probably work, some of them probably don't.
Some do, some don't,
Do you get to learn lessons? Do you have enough visibility inside that you can pull some wisdom out of those things?
We try, but sometimes information isn't available to us. But at the end of the day, again, our focus is our own business. We face many challenges. We just, if there is a challenge in front of us, we will break down that challenge and figure out how we can get around it and how can we, achieve our goal by, overcoming these challenges. So
nuts and bolts.
Yeah. So it's really operational. It's really kind of gritty. It's really like we get our hands dirty every day, all day. And that's how we like it. That's how it's been. And I think that's how it's going to continue.
Well, it keeps you connected to the business so that you actually know what's happening and what needs to happen. And that's the difference between a company that's got leadership and a company that doesn't, right? So in all of that, you've been doing this for a long time and you started out, we were talking beforehand. So when you started the company, you were single, right?
Yes.
And now you're a married man with kids.
Yes.
I want to talk about that life as a business owner versus as a person with a job. Not one better than the other, but they certainly impact your life differently if you have a job or if you have a business. So what were the early days like as far as impact on your your personal life, your what was it like?
I mean, it's a change, right? So when we started the business, I was single, shortly thereafter got married. We didn't have kids for a couple of years, but then, kids came along and they happened to come along right at the peak of the financial crisis, 07, 08. My daughter was 07, my son was 08. And, it's just challenging because our business was basically almost bankrupt. And, you have 2 small kids, you got a spouse, and, you have to grind through it every single day and just overcome each and every challenge, including several of our customers in 07, 08, essentially went Chapter 7, which is dissolution. There's no bankruptcy even because their doors closed, done.
Yeah.
So, we had to write off a bunch of our receivable as essentially bad debt that we were never going to recover. But we worked with our banks and our lenders. We had a couple of lenders at the time, and we essentially had to restructure, how we did our business, how we managed our customer population. And since then, we've only focused on working with the large, Fortune 500, Global 2000 type companies. And one of the primary reasons from it, that those are the only companies we work with, is because of the quality of receivable. We like to collect 100% of all our receivable. And we feel that, if it's a publicly traded or a larger, Fortune 500 type company, they always pay. Okay, they might mess up on, processing an invoice, but eventually they'll get it right and you will receive your funds.
Yeah.
So that's one of the primary reasons that we've only focused on the large corporations. Yes, occasionally we'll work with a startup, but it's really not our preference. And I think at this point, we probably have no companies that are in startup mode that we work with. Maybe once or twice a year, someone will come along because of a relationship with someone internal to TalentBurst. And just purely because of that relationship on a personal level, we'll try and service that customer.
Yeah. I feel the same about startups for the most part. What I like for fun to work with is I like to work with industries that are well established, but under new challenges or new stresses because of the way things are changing or societal pressures. So like we work with a lot of outdoor or adventure sport brands like snowboard companies or mountain biking companies or archery companies. And you learn all this stuff about the archery or hunting business being on a decline since the 70s. So there's all these brands that don't know what to do with their disappearing client base. Or snowboarding. Snowboarding came on out of the 70s and 80s and 90s. It was just like huge, the coolest sport. And I'm a snowboarder, so I love it. But, it's in the Olympics. It's probably the most watched section of the Olympics. It's got all this great fanfare. But then the industry's like slowly dying because nobody's putting their kids on snowboards anymore because it went from a thing you do on the mountain for fun to the X Games and big air and scary, and moms and dads are like, they're just not putting their kids into it because it looks like this crazy extreme sport when in reality, most people don't ever ride like that and it's not. But they did it to themselves because all of their marketing, all of their outward voice was that. So I like to get into those types of places where they're established brands, but they're hungry again because something changed in their landscape. And then you get to work on problems, but you get to work on problems that you can actually work to solve as opposed to a startup where everything's good and gung-ho, charge forward. And then like 3 days later, they're like, oh yeah, it's over. Sorry. Which has happened, there's an allure to startups, because there's a lot of energy around it and there's a lot of excitement and it's usually a really charismatic person or team. And it's, you want to, there's a buzz to it, but there's also a certain, it takes from you if it doesn't go exactly as it should. So enough about me. Go back to now you start to have kids and you're running the business. How does it, do you have to adjust the business? Do you have to adjust your life? A little bit of both,
I don't think we adjusted the business really. The business became a whole lot more serious because we had no outs. We couldn't fail, essentially. So, we worked harder and, as the business grew, one downside of, a business that's growing, especially on a national or an international level is, the travel associated with meeting customers or meeting employees. So, me personally, I try and balance the time I'm not at home. If I'm shaking hands with a customer or I'm at a trade conference or I'm in one of our offices with the time that I'm back home. So, my goal is if I can try and achieve, at most be out of, Boston area for maybe 72 hours or, maybe 3 or 4 days at most in a month.
Just stay a little closer to the microphone.
Yeah, sure. I just try and, not be away from Boston more than 3 or 4 days a month. That's it.
Mm-hmm. So you design the way that you're interfacing with the business around the way you want to interface with your family. That's kind of what I was getting at and asking about, because it seems like as times change and families change, priorities change. But I've watched it in my own life. When I got to that same point as you and having kids and coming out of the economy tanking and changed my business dramatically, and it was hard and we almost died. And looking at what was important to me, I also changed the way that I operate the business too, in that I look at part of the way I pay myself is in time, and it's time with what's important to me, time with the family, time with, the things like that. So I look around, and so you work hard, right? And you do a lot of travel and you're out but you do still get to shape what you're doing so that you can, when you get back from 3 days of travel, you can spend a little extra time with the family, and you can do that. And I think that's a great thing about owning a business. And I think a lot of business owners don't do it. Not a good or a bad, everyone does things differently, but they get caught up because if you let it, it can consume you, and you can always go. There's always something to do. I could put in 24 hours a day, never stop, and I could be busy, right? But that's not what I want to do.
Definitely. I mean, we try and I'm saying we because my partners and I, we all have families, and we just really try and balance work life with family life.
Do you help keep each other grounded in that? Help remind each other? Yeah, that's what I'm wondering.
Because at this point, it's a common goal. If I fail, they fail, and vice versa. And, with the responsibilities that we have towards our, families, it's failure at this point is not really an option. Mm-hmm. We're too deep in it. Not to succeed.
Well, plus you've worked for it, you got there, right? You were on the brink, you had bad times, and you said, no, we're going to fight our way back from this and come back. So failure's not an option. It's driving forward.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's a mindset. You know what I mean? That's a mindset to not give up and to keep going, which isn't always easy, and it's tough, and it's not for everybody, because I have friends that are professionals and have great jobs and earn great incomes, and they like what they do. But I have some friends that their job dictates most anything. It dictates their time, more so than mine, where they don't have flexibility. They don't get to engineer their day. And some people have, seems old school now to think about it, but jobs where being there matters. So they're there, they're at 7 a.m. They're there till 8 at night. They're always being seen, even if it's not productive time. But it's not just not productive time. It's unproductive time. You're wasting part of your life. And I hate seeing that. And that is something that I feel really thankful for, as being a business owner, that I do get to engineer my day. I get to adapt to whatever changes in life. I know we both have hockey playing sons. And that took some re-engineering, because hockey, like we were talking beforehand, I didn't know much about hockey. I was never a hockey player, and I didn't know that hockey was like having a business. It takes over your whole life to have a hockey kid.
Sure.
But I'm glad that I get to work around it. And my wife and I do split some duties and divide and conquer, but it's nice to be able to be at the games and be at the practices, suiting them up. And it's a cool thing to watch. And I wouldn't want to trade my business, right? Because I love what I do, and the work is exciting, and it's like we talked, it's always new. But I also wouldn't want to trade my family life and being there and seeing my kids go from riding, bicycles with training wheels to being, mine's a hockey goalie, and it's just so cool to watch them be like little humans interfacing with the world, and that's something that keeps me grounded in my job and go back to work every day. And I can admit my business is 19 years old, and when I was starting it, I did not always have the correct mindset. I didn't always think of customers first. And I can honestly say, I sit down at my desk in the morning and think about, that's how I start the day, is what's going on with all the different clients, who needs attention, who haven't I spoken to this week, who do I need to talk to? And I want to, because they're the people that enable me to have the life that I have. And I didn't have that mindset, 19 years ago, 15 years ago. I was more just driven by go, what's next. And I think that was a huge flaw in the way that I ran the business, was always thinking about what's next in growth and sales and not thinking, not that we didn't do a good job, we did, but it would lose shine.
Right.
And it shouldn't. At least now, I like to go back and extra service every client, because I don't know, it sounds weird, but realizing that they're the ones who give me the freedoms that I do have.
Right.
And I have a lot of freedom that I enjoy. And that's like being here with you in the middle of the afternoon. You know, it's nice to be able to take this time and go explore conversations with like-minded people. But if I worked a 9 to 5, it would be pretty hard to do this. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the good byproducts of being an entrepreneur. You control your time. And if you are able to balance your family life with, your personal commitments, it can actually be a really good equation overall.
Yeah, it really can. Something I ask everybody, and it's not like a question that has anything to do with like a theme of the show, but I like to hear from people what their experiences. So if you go back the 19 or 18 years to Brad when he's in his 20s and starting the business, what have you learned along the way? Is there one thing you could say you just didn't see coming about owning a business when you were someone who was deciding you wanted to be someone who owned a business, versus now that you do?
Yeah. So have you seen Wall Street?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. One line typifies what it is to be an entrepreneur, and that's money never sleeps. So it's a 7 by 24 by 365. I feel like if I'm awake, I'm working. Mm-hmm. Whether it's a Monday or it's a Saturday or it's Super Bowl or whatever the case might be, either I'm getting text messages or I'm planning for the next meeting or presentation, or I'm traveling somewhere, or one of our employees is, reaching out with a query or, a question about something. And it's not, like being in a corporate job where you can shut off at 5 p.m. Friday and just wait for your paycheck on Monday.
Right.
You have to make things happen, whether it's a weekend or whenever it is. So it's basically being on a hamster wheel nonstop for 18 years. And, I'm happy to be on that wheel because I enjoy what I do. Mm-hmm. And I love what I do. But, I tell my kids the same things, money never sleeps. So you just got to keep going, just never stop.
Yeah. And there's odd asks of your time, and it's not, there's things that have to do with the job specifically that you have to do. Like you're giving examples of odd times and things that people wouldn't have to do. Like, for example, we have a client that merged with a publicly traded company, and the announcement of the new organization was coming out January 1st at 8 a.m. So we had built a website for them and everything was ready to go. And we had to be up and launching and testing and doing the site at 7 a.m. New Year's morning.
Yeah.
So I was at a friend's house that we had slept over with the kids, and the kids are friends with their kids. And so we had a whole nice New Year's Eve party night. But the whole time in my head is thinking about the launch in the morning and being ready for that. And then while the whole house sleeps, I'm up in the corner, on my laptop, overseeing the launch of the site, making sure it goes smooth. And I don't mind at all. I was happy to do it. It was fine. It just comes, with the territory.
Yeah. We had a similar experience. This Jan 6th, I think, was a Monday. And two of our largest gig economy customers that we'd worked with through 2019 were going live with a fairly large population on the 6th, which was a Monday. So essentially, my team had to work through Christmas and New Year's to make sure we could take hundreds of these employees live, make sure that we were able to record their hours, we were able to pay them, we were able to manage their benefits accurately on the 6th of Jan. Or starting the 6th of Jan.
Right.
So, we worked straight through Christmas, New Year's as well.
Yeah. It's funny because I always see part of the differences, just alluding to what you were saying, it's not always the work or like taking a website live or a human capital instance. But it's the thinking, I think, is in your head too. So if you're not, it could be Saturday night at 10 o'clock, or it could be anytime, but you're thinking about that presentation, or you're thinking about that client need, or something that has to happen or isn't happening and needs to happen. But it seems like it's always in your head. It's always with you because you care. I mean, and I don't say that like people with a normal job don't care. Of course they do. And there's people that take great pride in their work. I just can't speak to that. It's been a long time that I've just been a business owner. So all I know is that it's never truly not in my head. It's always there. I could be watching a hockey game, my son's hockey game, but I'm going to be thinking about something also, about something I need to do, or even something as trivial as an email I need to respond to but I'll be thinking about that. I'll be thinking about what I need to say and who I need to talk to, and little things that consume you. And consume's the wrong word. Little things that take up part of your brain at all times, because consume's a negative connotation, and I don't feel negative about it at all. It's just part of my DNA. It's part of what I do. But it's also the same reason why you'll never get a vacation responder from me. To a client, I'm never on vacation. I go on vacation, but if any communication comes through that needs me on it, I'm on it. I'm going to plug back in. I'm going to be involved. So I try to balance it. Like if I'm on vacation, I won't be on my phone 24/7, but there's a window every few hours where I'm going to check it and make sure that there's nothing that needs me to address it. And if I do need to address it, I'm going to address it. Yeah. And that's not, some people would look at that as like prison, but I couldn't walk away from that. I'd rather know something's broken than not know if something's broken.
That's an entrepreneurial mindset that you have, which is very important. And again, that's the same concept of money never sleeps, right? Like, because you never let your clients know that you're on vacation, you're constantly working, which is good. Now you can take your vacation while you're at it. Yeah. But, if you have to attend to something on your phone or, make one quick call, I think that can really make a positive impact on the overall experience that your customer might have.
Huge. And I'm lucky in that my wife has always been really supportive. I don't get any flack from her on it. If I have to, we have a client that I love. It's just like a cool client. They're a snowboarding company, a global snowboarding company that I always wanted. And they kind of, popped up and needed something while we're on vacation. And we're on vacation at, in a remote location with no cell service or very bad cell service. So I basically had to pack up the car, drive to the nearest Starbucks, which is probably 45 minutes away, or nearest coffee shop. I don't know if it was a Starbucks. Find a place with Wi-Fi in order to sit down in the corner and end up having a meeting with these guys in Germany. Yeah. So it's on the time change too. So it's just all this stuff that I think that it didn't cross my mind to say, no, man, I'll be back in 2 weeks. Yeah. Let's talk then. That's just, it was, go time. All right, gotta go. And she was just, all right, cool. Good luck. See you when you get back. And the kids are like, good luck, Dad. They don't give me any shit over it. It's more support, which is rare. I don't think, well, it's just that they get it. They understand what it takes to come along with also having the freedoms.
They're an entrepreneurial family.
They really are. They really are. My kids have their own business. We started a little website. My youngest drew the logo and everything, and they sell. It's a drop ship company. They have their own e-commerce website. We make skateboards that we learned how to make together in the garage, like literally make them. But they also drop ship like adventure sport gear through their e-commerce store that we pick out and we'll source from China, or either from a drop ship service, or we'll actually source products from China and design them, put a logo on, put them in the store. So the kids have been learning to be entrepreneurial. Because my dad did that. Well, I didn't have a business it's just because it was different times. There was no such thing as a website when I was a kid. Right. But I did have my own, when I was a kid, my dad let me use his lawnmower, and I could mow the lawn, and he would pay me to mow the lawn. And I could also drag it around the neighborhood and mow other lawns if I wanted to. And my dad was an entrepreneur too. And he always had instilled in me, do you want to work for others, or do you want them working for you? And think about your life. Ever since a young age, think about how to plan things. And I went to Babson for grad school, which is an entrepreneurial business school. And when I went, you're supposed to write this big long essay about how you'll be an entrepreneur, or what you do as an entrepreneur, which is funny because there was only 3 of us that actually owned businesses in the whole cohort. Most people hadn't owned one yet. They were there to become entrepreneurs. Okay. But I wrote my essay that when I was 8, my dad let me drag around a lawnmower, and I went around my neighborhood and I got 20 or 30 houses that would allow me to mow their lawn for $20. And then I hired neighborhood kids to mow the lawns for $10, and I ended up not mowing any lawns. But I had a nice little landscaping company when I was 8 or 9 years old. Nice. And my dad, he didn't see that coming, but he thought it was awesome. He thought that was the best way I could have handled him giving me the mower and saying, go make some money.
Yeah, that's basically entrepreneurship 101.
So I want to do that with my kids, but in the digital age. Not that there's anything wrong with mowing lawns, but I mean, they can go mow the lawn too. Yeah. But I wanted to help them with that. So anyway, I got way off topic, but I thought it was cool that the kids are running their own little website, and we have family meetings and talk about what should we get in there, what should we do with the business, what's next.
That's great, because those are the building blocks that they can then build on later on.
Yeah, I'm hoping they do. If they, if they like it. I'm not saying that. I don't think my company would be like a legacy business or anything, because they'd have to really be into what I'm into in the way of customer interface development, which is a little nerdy and probably not too interesting to them. But I hope to plant the seed, because I think it's a beneficial life, because it makes a difference. It impacts things.
It empowers you to do what you love, but at the same time, balance the people that you love. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of a good way of looking at entrepreneurship. It
is. And it provides a balance, even though from the outside it can look like it's not balanced, because it can look like you're consumed, but I don't feel consumed. You don't look like you feel consumed. No. Just because it doesn't go to sleep doesn't mean that it's taking over, right?
Right.
We're still driving. And I think that's what keeps me interested. You know what I mean? And that and making a difference, which sounds silly because I'm a marketing guy, but I get to touch so many organizations that, so I indirectly have a play. Like right now we have a company, a client that makes products that are really well suited to helping with the coronavirus issue.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we've been, on fire for a couple of weeks, putting together plans and working with it, not to capitalize on the problem, but we've been building consumer education around stopping the spread and different tools that are available to first responders and public transport systems and whatnot, because they sell some of these things. But we've been focused on creating content around best practices, not just sales content. So indirectly, I'm having a hand in that and trying to help stop something that's pretty bad, and so it feels pretty good. And I get to ramp up and get all excited and try to make a difference. And then in a month, I'll be off to something else, because something else will come up.
Yeah.
That's what keeps me interested.
That's really interesting. Good to know that.
It's cool. Yeah. It's, I feel lucky to get plugged into that sort of thing and try to figure out how to help.
Absolutely.
It's interesting because a lot of those companies, these guys are brilliant engineer geniuses, but they don't know how to
market.
Right. They don't know how to make a person notice or get involved, or what's, the WIFM, what's in it for me from the client standpoint. Mm-hmm. They don't know how to turn what's amazing about what they've done into that message that someone says, oh, that's the right thing for me. And there's a gap in between there where luckily we get to help.
Right. No, that's really interesting to know.
Yeah. It's fun. It's interesting.
Yeah.
And just like that, we are over an hour already. I want to be respectful of your time. And, do you have anything else you want to talk about? I don't need to go anywhere, but I don't want to take up your whole day when I know I asked for an hour.
No, I think this is good. It's entrepreneurship. It's the more you embrace it, you can really be successful, because the longer you stick with it, the more lessons, you kind of learn, and you're able to kind of extract the best lessons from your mistakes over the past, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and then just build upon those. So I really feel like, even though I've been doing this for 18 years, now we're getting into, a sweet spot where we're able to kind of leverage our knowledge base, leverage our experiences, and hopefully build something that's lasting.
It seems like you are. I mean, just from the outside, plus from knowing you guys back in the day where you had, years ago when we met, you had this same vision. You had this same calm focus on what you wanted to achieve with the company and where you were going. And it struck me then, and it strikes me now. It hasn't left the building.
Right.
And that's cool, because in a lot of places that sort of focus doesn't even last 5 years, never mind 18.
Right.
It's kudos to you and to the partners for keeping it together.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, congrats on all your success as well.
Oh, thanks. Hopefully we can do this again and talk about where things go in another few months or another few years. Maybe, and we can keep the conversation going. I'd love to hear what's coming for TalentBurst and what's next that you can't tell us yet about in the gig economy and in some of the new products.
Some of the new stuff that we're working on. But maybe next year, same time, we can pick up version 2 of this.
That'd be awesome. And maybe in the meantime, we'll run into each other at some hockey games.
Sounds good.